Welcome to the Chamber's Elevated Conversations podcast. And now, your host, Dave Eckmann.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Elevated Conversations. I'm your host, Dave Eckmann. And with me right now is Jeff Evenhouse from LB Medwaste. Again, LB Medwaste is the 2020 Small Business of the Year, business to business. Jeff, congratulations to you on your award. And
thank you.
You bet. And hope things are going well for you since then. And what we do in the podcast really is to bring a little bit more understanding into the companies that we work with in different situations in our community. And as I reflected, Jeff, on your talk when you received the award, was the complexity. People don't know about your business in terms of the complexity that it offers and the things that you do, but then more so, I think, how you will be impacted by the coronavirus, COVID-19. And what I was hoping you could share with our audience this morning, there were two things that I heard you talk about. One was about how you had to pivot as a business because your customers were impacted, and two, your processes had to change because the public health necessitated it. So, first off, I heard you talking about the industry impact. Could you share with the audience, who it is primarily that you serve as a business, and then how coronavirus impacted those customers and then your business?
Sure. We pick up needles and sharps and then red bag waste. Initially, I've actually given speeches in the past that, hey, if there would be a pandemic someday, we are going to be the, person that you want around, only because then we can handle that waste and we can do it at a reasonable rate and things like that. Because we're only the few in Wisconsin. It's that actually has a processing unit. That I call it autoclave to process, so basically sterilize the waste. But we were impacted by, dentist offices. They were just shut down. That obviously you're working with people in their mouths, and especially early days of COVID. You don't know how it's transmitted exactly, and it's still some good question. But yeah, so we lost a lot of business initially. However, like nursing homes and things like that, have more restrictions. So that part of the industry is, has more waste. So it really just kind of balanced out actually in that regard.
So it's interesting that when you just started to make your comment that part of your talk, or maybe it's part of your sales approach to your customers about where you are that business organization that's going to be there when you have something like a pandemic. That you had that foresight in your mind.
Yep. Yeah, I've been telling people that for 15 years, like, hey, if this ever would happen, because it's like a garbage company. Almost everybody has garbage, but in the medical waste field, only maybe 5% of the businesses have medical waste, and so it's really, you really have to be in a bigger city really to make a go of it, and that's why we expanded like we did. But we like to, pride ourselves and, that we can provide that service in the state of Wisconsin, because we're in the Northwoods, really.
Right.
And, yeah.
See, I think that's an interesting thing too, because here we are in the greater Wausau area. We're at the intersection of I-39 and Highway 29, so really the crossroads of commerce. You are an organization then that you go way beyond the Wausau Metro, I'm betting.
Yes. Yeah, we have trucks like in Minneapolis and Green Bay and Milwaukee, Chicago, and, things like that, because they, that's where you can, have more generation of the medical waste.
Yeah.
And a lot of that waste is brought to Wausau, and we process it right here.
Right. And so
yeah.
You mentioned, you're one of the few that has you do the collection and then you do the processing. So that leads me into the second part of what I think might be interesting for people. Now, you mentioned the word autoclave. Now, when I was in the Army, I was a medic, and I would have some tied responsibilities to making sure that cleanliness and sterilization, and we had a very small autoclave for surgical instruments, things like that. I got to imagine you've talked about your process change with autoclaving. Maybe you could share with the audience as to what changed, and what's an autoclave look like? How big is it?
Well, actually, as far as change, we haven't really changed the process. Processing medical waste is highly regulated. Lots of regulations involved. So we really haven't changed the process really in that regard. It's just people maybe now more aware that there's companies like ours out there that can do it. An autoclave, they comes in all shapes and sizes. So you have a door on the one side that's just a lot of steel involved. You get a lot of pressure and heat inside, and for a lot of minutes, and that just basically kills the germs.
Right. And you really had with COVID, did you have to take it to the nth degree that
No.
things, or what, is that something you always do?
Actually, the COVID virus is actually easy to kill. It's just, you just don't want to obviously get the COVID virus. You just don't want to get it, but it's not it's just it runs in the family of, of flu. So it's not a hard, there's some viruses out there that maybe it is harder to kill, but the COVID virus is not a hard virus to kill. It's just, it just needs to be put in an autoclave and taken care of that way.
Okay. Then, it's interesting because remember when I was out with you that day when we were naming the recipients, that my next stop was out at Wausau Smiles, the dental office, of which you conveyed to me your customer. And then when I talked to Dr. Bouchon about an hour later, he spoke highly of you and your service. And so I think it's interesting that you were a recipient and also Wausau Smiles was a recipient, that the connectivity in the supply chain was really ironic.
And we've been doing a lot of dentists in the area too, so It's really kind of neat.
And just so we let the audience know, you're a family-owned company. Let's just give them a real quick history as to the startup and where you are today. My
dad had a garbage company, LB Trucking, which serviced the greater Wausau, but he had 100 employees before he sold it. But he's in Stevens Point, Green Bay, Minocqua, and those surrounding areas. And so he ran that for 25 years and sold it in 2000. But in 1989 is when all the rules and regulations came out with the medical waste. And so, someone came to him and said, hey, you should start this, and, you have a need. And so he basically started it and in 1989, and it was actually really slow going, but at first, and that's how the medical waste. But, basically I believe it was 1976 is when he started doing the garbage. And so, so I worked for my dad for 15 years, and part of the LB flag, and then they started LB Recycling, and I believe 1989, or in that area, and then and they started the medical waste. So there's just been a lot of different companies, carrying the LB flag, and so I've worked for LB for my whole life.
I'll be darned. Yeah, that's a good story.
And so I should say that since my dad, I basically took over the company of LB Medwaste in 2005. So my dad owned it before with some investors, and then I took it over, and now I own it.
That's terrific. That's terrific.
Yeah.
I love it. It's fun to learn about family businesses, and you've adapted into a new environment. And so congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you.
So closing out, when I was talking to you and you were sharing your story with at the awards program that we held virtually, I noticed medals hanging behind you.
Yeah.
Why don't you share with me and the audience what those medals are all about?
Well, about 4 years ago, I got involved in, I was like, hey, I needed to do a bit more. I was going home and, eating potato chips in front of the TV, and I started doing CrossFit. So I've been doing some CrossFit, and then I got involved in Spartan races. And so I just really enjoyed doing these Spartan races. And I've been doing like 3 each year, 5 mile, an 8 mile, and a 12 mile. And they call the 12 mile the beast. So yeah, you gotta be prepared. But I just loved doing this CrossFit and then doing these runs, and it's basically, it's not just a run. You have obstacle courses like you have 20, 30 obstacles where you're jumping over walls and climbing ropes and diving in the water and different things. And so it's just kind of test your physical, mental, part of your body. And so I've just really enjoyed it. You just kind of feel alive doing that kind of thing. So, so then you get it's basically a medal is just a finishing award. So
sure.
It doesn't matter how fast you do it. You just challenge yourself. And when you get done, you get a nice award or a medal, and just kind of remind you of the time. I've just really enjoyed it.
Yep, the gruel. I've done some of those races, but and I don't think people understand that really is a growing sport.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they've grown a lot, and I mean, there's other types of them like that out there, but yeah, it is, and it's like a lot of times you'll have friends, you'll get together and you do it, and just you test your body and you build friendships and meet people that you haven't met before out there.
Right. Are you an iron? Do you do iron bowl at all?
I do not. I
Okay.
do not.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we have in the community now. It's an extreme race where they have a 50K and a 15K trail run up and down Granite Peak. Grueling in itself.
That sounds like fun. I did do the Ragnar one race down 9 Mile.
That's right.
I enjoyed that.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Jeff, thank you for your time this morning. Jeff Evenhouse, LB Medwaste. We appreciate you spending some time with us in the audience, sharing your story. And we hope you continue to march forward in big ways as we move through this pandemic. And thank you again for your time.
Absolutely. And if I could just mention one thing, we also do that we added on is we do document destruction. So that's something that we can do locally where a lot more people have that service. And I wanted to mention 2 people that I didn't mention before, Jim Vlietstra and Paul Jasinski. Jim Vlietstra was our first driver back in 2000 or 1989.
Sure.
And then Paul Jasinski also. And then both those guys worked like 10 years. And so they were kind of pioneers. But I had to mention those. I didn't mention those 2 the last time. So, thank you very much for having me.
You bet. I'm glad you did that because that's really important to acknowledge the people that help you to get you where you are today. So I appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
This podcast episode is a production of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce.